Welcome back. In the previous video, we looked at how astrology gradually lost its place within Western science and philosophy as religious debates and modern scientific methods reshaped how people understood the universe. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, astrology was widely dismissed in the West as superstition or pseudoscience. But there is another part of this story that many people don't know. Much of the original tradition of ancient astrology had actually been lost for centuries. Many of the foundational texts of Hellenistic astrology, written in Greek during the early centuries of the Common Era, were no longer widely available in Europe. Some survived in fragments, others existed only in translations preserved in Arabic or Latin manuscripts. As a result, when astrology experienced a revival in Europe and America during the 19th and early 20th centuries, astrologers were often working with partial knowledge of the older tradition. Many techniques had been forgotten, misunderstood, or reconstructed in new ways. Modern astrology developed its own ideas and approaches, some of them creative and insightful, but often quite different from the methods used by ancient astrologers. Then something unexpected happened. Beginning in the late 20th century, historians and astrologers began to search systematically for the surviving manuscripts of ancient astrology. One of the most important efforts in this process was a translation project known as Project Hindsight, which began in the 1990s. Scholars involved in this project worked to locate, translate, and study surviving Greek and Latin astrological texts that had not been widely accessible for centuries. These translations revealed a far more detailed and sophisticated system of astrology than many modern astrologers had realized. Techniques described in ancient texts by authors such as Claudius Ptolemy, Vettius Valens, and others showed that astrology in the ancient world had developed a complex set of methods for interpreting planetary positions, timing events, and understanding patterns in human life. In other words, modern astrologers were discovering that large parts of their own tradition had been missing. Over the past few decades, many astrologers have begun studying these newly translated texts and experimenting with the techniques they describe. The result has been a growing movement often called traditional astrology, which attempts to reconstruct and understand the older methods as accurately as possible. At the same time, other astrologers continue to work within modern psychological astrology, which focuses more on inner experience and symbolic interpretation. Today, these different approaches exist side by side. What is most interesting is astrology itself is not a fixed system frozen in the past. Instead, it is something more like a long intellectual tradition that has evolved across many centuries and cultures. And in some ways, we may only now be beginning to understand how that tradition originally worked. In the final video in this series, I'll step back from the history and talk about something more personal. Why someone who spent most of his life approaching the world through science and rational inquiry might eventually become interested in astrology, and why astrology may still offer a valuable way of thinking about patterns in life today.